I'd like to spend this mentorship moment talking about the Enlisted Promotion System, or EPS. The EPS cycle is about to kick off for the year, and I want to ensure every soldier knows some important information about what you have to do to put in an EPS packet, and what's new this year. I have with me today a member of the JFHQ EPS team, Sergeant Robeck, to help address some of these questions. Sergeant Robeck, can you tell me what a soldier should know to put in an EPS packet this year?
Sure, Sergeant Major. First, I think it's important for soldiers to know the EPS timeline. Consideration packets for E5 are going to be due to state no later than 20 December of this year. Consideration packets for E6 will be due to state no later than 13 February of 2014, and consideration packets for E7 through E9, as well as consideration packets for the First Sergeant and CSM Best Qualified list will be due to state no later than 11 April of 2014.
Those are some important dates, and I'm glad you mentioned those. Some of the units are going to have different dates to make sure that they hit those dates to getting the packets to state, so I'm glad you mentioned those.
Correct. Another thing that's important for soldiers to know is the whole soldier concept. This is the model that the board uses to evaluate a soldier's career. It's based on documentation that can be found in their IPERMS record, and it covers some of the key points such as job performance, leadership, and potential to serve at the next higher grade.
Wonderful.
And then a few things that soldiers have available to them are some publications that we put out on our EPS SharePoint site. We have the whole soldier concept handout, as well as an annual publication of the EPS pamphlet. Those are available to the units to download and make available to their soldiers. The units also have access to the Master Development List, which is a tool that they can use to assist soldiers in making the best zone of consideration election prior to submitting the packet. And we also have a Facebook page that can be found by searching for Minnesota National Guard EPS, and we update that periodically with pertinent information to the soldiers.
That's good information for our M-Day soldiers who may not necessarily have access to SharePoint.
Right.
Is there anything new this year in EPS?
Sergeant Major, the first big change this year in EPS is pertaining to structured self-development. As of the 1st of January 2014, SSD Level 1 is going to be required to be complete for promotion to E5. However, it will not be required to be complete for consideration. So those soldiers can turn in their packets without having it complete, but will not be eligible for promotion until they've completed it. As of the 1st of April of 2014, SSD Level 3 will be required to be complete prior to submitting a packet for consideration to E7, and SSD Level 4 will be required to be complete prior to turning in a packet for consideration to E8.
That's really important. SSD is becoming more and more important, and I think people need to know they got to really get on the SSD so it doesn't start affecting their promotion.
Right. Another one of the big changes is in reference to our zones of consideration. We've modified those in large part due to the Women in Combat initiative. Instead of having a current battalion election, we've expanded the 150-mile election to 175 miles.
Great.
And then the last key thing that's changed this year is we no longer accept the 2-1. Soldiers have to make sure that they have an updated current ERB, which means it has to be validated by them within 1 year prior to the convening of the board.
That's an important change because a lot of people still do have their 2-1s, so they're going to have to get in and get that updated to an ERB. That's great. So what are the steps that a soldier has to take to put in an EPS packet?
The first thing a soldier should do is review their AMHRR or their IPERMS records via the link in AKO. They want to check to make sure that there's no missing documentation, that they have that ERB validated, updated, and permed, and that their evals are present, and that there's no gaps in the rating period. Another key with that is for the grades, E5 and E6, they receive administrative points to be combined with their board score, so they need to make sure that those are updated based on the documentation that they have in IPERMS. And if they realize that they're missing points, they need to submit the documentation to get those points.
So they really need to start quite a bit ahead of time to be able to see if they have to get any documentation to update any of that information.
Roger, Sergeant Major.
Okay.
Another key thing that soldiers can do is ensure that they're keeping track of their accomplishments throughout their rating period. So when they sit down with their rater for their counseling sessions, they can give that to their rater and make sure that they get included on their eval. And then they need to make sure that their evals are completed on time and that they're permed for access by the board members.
That's a great comment, because some people think there's not a lot they can do about their own evaluations, but in fact there is. They can have input into those evaluations, and they really need to stay on top of those timelines so that their promotions and EPS eligibility isn't affected by that.
Roger.
Thank you. The more you can learn about EPS, the better prepared you can be for the process, and the better you can prepare your subordinates as well. EPS is a great process, but it starts with you. Take control of your future by ensuring your first-line leaders conducting your initial and quarterly counseling, and you have active input into goal setting, performance tracking, and timely completion of your evaluations. If you're interested in getting to know the process even better, talk to your unit full-time staff about becoming a board member on the EPS boards this year. It'll open your eyes to how it all comes together.